This pilot episode from the film series Philadelphia, The Great Experiment was made possible through the generous support of the Barra Foundation, the Philadelphia Foundation, the Halloran Family Philanthropy, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Film Office, the Greater Philadelphia Film Office, and many others. We thank them all.
Drove to town. Black cloth hanging from almost every house. Shutters closed. Portraits of Lincoln draped in crepe in hundreds of the windows. Even the houses of leading Democrats bowed. The mayor sent notice that unless they gave this sign of respect, he would not be answerable to the consequences. Sidney George Fisher.
Not only the shock of his death, but now the funeral was coming to Philadelphia's doorsteps. And the corpse of the man who had led them through 4 years of contest, carnage, loss, viciousness, survival, was now to be laid in state in the most sacred historical spot in the city of Philadelphia itself. People leaving offices, homes, standing on front stoops, stores exhausting their supplies of black bunting so that people could drape their windows.
Today is the day long to be remembered. I have been very busy all morning. The president comes to town this afternoon. It was the grandest funeral I ever saw. The coffin and hearse was beautiful. Emily Davis.
Some 300,000 people formed two great lines, strung all the way from Independence Hall back to the Schuylkill River.
Bells and church towers tolled, the heads bowed, even the weeping, the mourning, but above all, the silence, as though no one dared even to break the spell of homage being paid to Abraham Lincoln.
The Civil War ends, Lincoln's killed. You go through the period of mourning and remorse, and you try and right the political scales, but at some point, it's like the dam breaks. The opportunities become so many, and they're coming so fast, that this energy just kind of breaks forth.
The main source of the new energy is the booming Pennsylvania Railroad, which carried more troops, oil, coal, and telegraph lines than any other. The expansion of the Pennsy made the difference for the Union and the city.
This meant that the biggest industry was going to be focused on the city. These are going to be the big energy force that's going to drive Philadelphia forward and transform it.
The sense of expansiveness and infinite possibility is just overwhelming. I mean, anything's possible at that moment.
The great leaders of the city are engineers, are manufacturers, are the men who are basically looking forward to the future rather than looking back to precedent. And that shapes everything.
In a city delirious with invention, these men take technological innovations and turn them into unprecedented wealth for both private gain and public good. The newspapers of the day call them capitalists. Among them is the opportunistic son of a brickmaker, Peter A.B. Widener. Widener makes his start as a butcher in the Spring Garden Market, where his knife skills are legend. He turns that stall into the city's first chain of butcher shops.
Widener made his money selling corrupt meat to the Union Army during the Civil War.
Meanwhile, his stall becomes a hangout for street-savvy politicians and a place to ask for and dispense favors. From there, Widener works his way up to become a ward boss.
He was also a brilliant capitalist.
So he takes that great piggy bank and invests it, naturally, in real estate and streetcars, which go together. He lays out new neighborhoods and supplies the workers with trolley lines to get there.
Later, hand-picked as city treasurer, Widener skillfully bridges public and private interests. He exploits his political relationships, showering shares of stock on public officials who protect his streetcar network from unwanted regulation and competition.
Streetcars tripled the area of the city.
The result? The modern city.
So for Philadelphia, this is a new day. This is one of those moments in the life of the city where ambition and aspiration trump everything. Consolidation had made Philadelphia an enormous city, but now with engineers having taken control, Philadelphia will build fast and tall.
With city offices cramped in ancient rooms next to Independence Hall, these civic dreamers propose a new city hall.
Well, there are only two logical places to put City Hall. Washington Square was the conservative choice, right in the center of the city's legal and financial district. Center Square would have served the growing downtown, which was moving west, and fittingly, this was precisely the spot that William Penn had always intended the administrative center of the city to be. You have two different models. You can serve the existing city of 1870, or you can serve Philadelphia of the future.
In a city divided on the question, a ward politician named William Stokely emerges from the political base of the Franklin Fire Company. Elected to city council, he wants to control the action. He helps establish the Public Building Commission to assert the newfound influence of the emerging Republican Party through contracts and kickbacks. For the commission's treasurer, Stokely turns to Peter Widener.
This is a bare-knuckle political move. Control the project and control the city. And for the next 30 years, the Building Commission is run as a private, secretive, closed shop.
Stokely avoids taking a position on where to locate City Hall. He wants to run for mayor in 1871. Controversy is not his ally. So, shrewdly, he has the matter put to a public referendum. Center Square, the choice for the future, wins overwhelmingly.
In a certain sense, you can look at this vote as an outpouring of a collective sense of relief, triumph, and renewed confidence. No longer will Philadelphia sustain itself on memory. Just the opposite. Philadelphia City Hall will be the tallest building in the world.
Picking up the center of the city and moving it about half a mile from where it was to where it is now is a remarkable way of punctuating this new age.
It was built to house a modern bureaucracy. From stone, marble, and bricks, 88 million of them, City Hall is built like a medieval castle. These bricks are fired and hauled by Irish immigrants.
We're a nation that likes to build things fast. Every building site is a mortgage that's costing money. And the quicker it's built, the quicker you can start earning money. City Hall is one of these peculiar buildings built with almost European deliberation and slowness. Even before ground was broken, there had been a 12-year design process. The building is under construction continuously for the next 30 years. This slow, deliberate pace of work gave them a chance to sculpt the building in its details, almost as an exquisite piece of public statuary.
A dozen blocks away from City Hall, tens of thousands of Irish immigrant laborers who had escaped famine and religious persecution inhabit a crowded web of alleys near South Street.
There's the common religion and the attitude, it's us against them. Growing up in Philly, you learn about the prejudice towards the Irish back in the old days, back in the 19th century, and you look at the cathedral and you see that there's no windows at street level, and we were always told that was because the Protestants were going to throw bricks and stones at our church. So we were brought up with the idea that we were under siege.
We tend today to think that race is the big burning question in American public life. But in 19th century Philadelphia, it was religion. And the worst riots the city ever saw were the anti-Catholic riots of the 1840s.
Those riots produced local heroes, men and boys who relentlessly guarded Catholic churches from crusading mobs of nativists. One of them was a grocer's son, William McMullen.
And he comes to prominence defending the institutions of that neighborhood, particularly the Catholic Church, against the anti-Catholic sentiment which was so strong in Philadelphia.
As a teenager, he held candles so bricklayers could build his neighborhood volunteer fire hall, the Moyamensing Hose Company. Admitted to Central High, the city's top school, he quit. Instead, he spent an extended youth on the streets in a fearless gang called the Killers.
By the time the Civil War comes around, he's a loyal member of the Democratic Party and therefore an anti-Lincoln figure in the city.
In the neighborhood, they call him the Squire.
He is the dominant character. He's outside the law, and he's a terror onto his own because he takes care of his own.
When the city tries to quarantine cholera victims in Moyamensing Hall, an indignant McMullen refuses to allow it. The building somehow catches fire. McMullen gives his firefighters the order, let it burn to the ground. Now a city of immigrants, 1 in 5 is foreign-born. At the very same moment, newly emancipated African Americans race here for a place to live their freedom.
There was a gateway between the North and the South. They would come through Philadelphia, and if they were lucky enough and blessed enough, they can then settle in Philadelphia and help to move the community forward.
This gateway to freedom for African Americans, the streets and blocks of Squire McMullen's neighborhood. At its center, the Institute for Colored Youth, a school established by abolitionist Quakers, providing a classical education to the children of the black elite.
Educate yourself. I mean, that was coming from Frederick Douglass. Get education. Once you get educated, then you can pull yourselves up. You can make a better life for yourself. No door is closed to you once it's open.
But in the rapidly expanding streets of Philadelphia, one significant door remains closed. At the very hour Congress adopts the 13th Amendment, officially ending slavery. In Philadelphia, streetcar operators poll their exclusively white riders. Would they accept black riders? The answer, no. The tally, 20-1. To think that when the nation was voting freedom, we were voting exclusion of colored people from our cars. The grossest kind of slavery. Alfred Love. Later that year, a lone woman defies the rule. She boards a streetcar. When she is told to leave, she refuses. As instructed, the horses are detached. The white riders move to another car. The woman sits there, by herself, for 24 hours. In fact, she is never really alone. Inside the Institute for Colored Youth, a protest movement is brewing. Among the leaders is Caroline LaCount. Brilliant orator and valedictorian of the class of 1863, LaCount is now a teacher at the Institute. She is an outspoken campaigner for equal rights.
She became more committed to education. She became more committed to having a legacy and to having a voice.
Slightly older than Carrie LaCount, Octavius Catto is also a teacher at the Institute. He too had been a top student there. During the war, he raised 11 regiments of black troops and was made an officer in the National Guard.
Octavius Catto has this sense of the possibilities of racial integration at a time when the realities of the day were all about segregation and exclusivity and blacks being demeaned and put aside.
Catto is out to break the color line in baseball, education, in the workplace, and most immediately, on the streetcar. There must come a change, one now in the process of completion, which shall force upon this nation, not so much for the good of the black man as for our own industrial welfare. O.V. Catto. Catto and William Still, a heroic leader of the Underground Railroad, push hard for equal access to the streetcars. But in Harrisburg, passage of this bill seems unlikely. Even their own allies pressure them to drop it. And yet, these leaders refuse. After 18 months of lobbying, William Still and Octavius Catto's streetcar desegregation bill passes into law.
This is a great moment in the racial history of Philadelphia. But progressivism and self-interest sometimes go hand in hand. And obviously there was money to be made in selling streetcar tickets to black Philadelphians.
Catto and LaCount will test the new law. Carrie, who has just turned 21, is sent to board a streetcar at 11th and Lombard. Ignoring her, the car keeps moving. The driver's response is curt and by now familiar. We don't allow niggers to ride. LaCount steps back, but not in silent protest. Instead, she goes to see the magistrate. He refuses to hear the case. Undaunted, Caroline obtains a copy of the law and returns to court. The verdict? A $100 penalty, stiff by the standards of the day.
What real cities do is they make people grow. And they take them out of their boxes, they take them out of their comfort zone, and they say, if you're going to make it in this city, you're going to have to dig a little deeper than your fear.
At 32, and now engaged to marry Caroline LaCount, Catto returns from campaigning for passage of the 13th Amendment to become the boys' principal of the Institute.
Here he is saying anything's possible. And he's not talking about the distant future, he's talking about what's possible now. He had been to Washington and farther south working to gain passage of the amendment that would give black men suffrage, the right to vote.
With that now accomplished, Catto's energies shift. The mayoral race looms in 1871, the first to count black votes in Philadelphia. Catto's candidate is William Stokely, the head of the Public Building Commission. African Americans, firmly aligned with the party of Lincoln, will be the swing vote.
He understood that he had to seize the moment. And I would say, I don't think anyone from Frederick Douglass on down or across the spectrum, I don't think any motivated, active, politically visible African American man in that period didn't worry about getting killed.
It's a critical election because, among other new developments, this is the first time that Philadelphia's blacks are going to vote across the boards.
Around the corner from Octavius Catto's house, William McMullen fights to control everything on his turf.
McMullen, just from the bootstrap tough nut of an Irishman, creates a political empire in Philadelphia.
But black suffrage, the integration of the streetcar, and now the demise of the volunteer fire hall have all put McMullen's empire under siege. He saw what was coming and would use whatever means necessary to stop it.
So you have the Irish Democrats in their saloon politics being challenged by this new rough and ready entrepreneurial political party based on new money that was able to build things and do things and deliver for people.
As election day dawns, Caddo heads to his classroom at the Institute.
As he left his house this day, he had the looming threat of violence all around him. The hospital was busy catering to riot victims. People are shouting. There's chaos, a sense of anarchy on the streets of Philadelphia that day.
At the school, he dismisses his students early for their own safety. Behind the school, McMullen's henchmen Reddy Deaver and Frank Kelly spot a black man, Isaac Chase, as he emerges from his door. Chase rushes back inside, but they follow him, and in front of his 11-year-old daughter, they murder him in cold blood.
What is really going on is working class immigrant resentment at Philadelphia's white Republican elite, which is focused on this influx of a black population which is taking away jobs from Irish immigrants. Put that explosive mix together, and that's where you get a riot.
And then you've got the police not doing anything, and you've got black people on rooftops shouting.
McMullen appears a moment later. He commands the whites to move on. At the same time, Caddo heads to the office of Democratic Mayor Daniel Fox, demanding he call in federal troops. On his way back, Caddo checks in at the headquarters of his National Guard unit to enlist them to keep the peace in Philadelphia. He walks to a pawn shop to purchase a gun and turns towards South Street, 1 block away. He's accosted by McMullen's operatives.
And they walk by him and then call his name. And when he turns around, they shoot him. And Caddo then struggles to move away from them. They follow him and shoot him again. And at that point, then a policeman comes along and he's struggling for his life in the policeman's arms.
As the morning breaks, William Stokely and the Republicans have swept into power. Octavius Caddo's funeral shuts city offices. Thousands of citizens walk along 125 carriages to the cemetery. There, Caroline LaCount loses control. Collapsing aside the grave, she begs God and Octavius to take her too. Dark clouds seem to hover over the city. 2 years later, overspeculation in railroads has led to the failure of the Philadelphia investment house of J. Cook, financier of the Civil War. In an instant, depression has set in. Across the city, mills and factories shut workers out. In Kensington, jammed with Irish and German families, workers are forced to accept poverty-scale wages. When the Franklin Savings Fund goes belly up in early 1874, thousands of those working families lose everything. While most other cities remain mired in depression, Philadelphia banks start to lend again. Factories and machine shops reopen, and the city's builders rise to a new challenge: to design and build the city of the future. In 18 months, Philadelphia will host a World's Fair to celebrate the 100th birthday of the nation.
For the Centennial, who had basically said, we don't have a lot of money to blow on buildings. We're going to take prefab, standardized parts, and at the end of the fair, we're going to dismantle the buildings and put these pieces back in the market. The result was this tremendous new reality. People came from Europe and saw the future.
Philadelphia develops a beauty of industrial modernism. The idea is to celebrate the innovation, the artisanal skill that's here in the city, and the belief that industrialism was productive of beauty.
It's the crowning achievement of its time. It's a chance for Philadelphia to reassert its special sense of place.
Just as Lincoln's death had unified Philadelphians in grief, so the Centennial would unify the nation, North and South.
This is an excuse to try and reconcile the Civil War. And it's an excuse for people all over the country to come to gather here to remind us of our shared connection to that history. It's been 11 angry, bitter years. And so the Centennial is a way of trying to bring some resolution to the Civil War.
10 million come. It's the largest public gathering yet in the nation's history.
It's a place where there's this wide open invitation to people of every conceivable persuasion, and they're brought to Philadelphia, they come to Philadelphia because it's a place that rewards ideas and rewards moxie. So Philadelphia, because of its openness, becomes a magnet. You get urbanity. It just arises from that mix.
The centerpiece is a gigantic machine that runs all the other machines, and people can go and see the modern world.
Technology was, just leaping, forward in ways that nobody had any way of predicting. So it's just that natural human curiosity, I think, that people wanted to find out what's our world all about now? What's going to happen to it? And this is the place to see it.
At the fair, entrepreneurs reign. Thomas Alva Edison showcases his quadruplex telegraph. George Pullman dazzles crowds with the elegance of his palace car. And Alexander Graham Bell exhibits his new telephone.
So when people came to Philadelphia, they saw a city with chest-beating gorillas in the Darwinian economic jungle fighting each other for industrial supremacy.
And the worker, for the first time, will be their patron.
The new forces, the industrial standardization that's happening here, scientific management is going to be invented here. And they're going to double wages across the board. It turns the worker into a consumer.
The visionary retailer John Wanamaker has already positioned his store to appeal to and serve this new consumer. Wanamaker's idea of a massive store with every product under one roof inspires the planners of the Centennial, who turn the fair into a consumer showcase, the first the world has ever seen.
Wanamaker's figuring out that the industrial economy isn't just about big steel I-beams and railroad locomotives, it's about consumer goods.
Wanamaker opens his new Grand Depot downtown, in the shadow of the new rising City Hall, in time and in sync with the Centennial.
You're going to walk in, you're going to be dazzled. Your wallet is going to fall open and money is going to spill out of it because you're just overwhelmed with the magnificence of this place. And you're going to feel like a better person for having bought something at Wanamaker's.
The Wanamaker makes explicit his desire to build a store that feels like the Centennial, so that when the fair is over, modern Philadelphians change the way they live. Urban life, in a sense, has been redefined.
The celebration lasts the summer and well into the fall. The outpouring captures a sense of triumph, not only of innovation and unity, but of the ideal this city had borne a century before: liberty. It is only fitting, then, that of all things first unveiled at the Centennial, the most memorable, the right arm and torch of a colossal sculpture, a statue of liberty. In one single gesture that summer of 1876, the torch shines back and forward to mark the origin of the modern world.